Chinese Communist Party wants to control China's private tutoring industry, not just for ideology, but also to control the money. And it's a big problem for parents. Welcome to China Unscripted. I'm Chris Chappell. China has a problem. Children are going to school, but they're learning too many useless subjects. And that's why in 2018, Chinese leader Xi Jinping started putting emphasis on the important stuff, following the path of socialist education with Chinese characteristics. Now, students can learn useful things like false historical narratives, class struggle, and most important, loyalty to the Communist Party. But there's a wrench in Xi Jinping's beautiful socialist education machine: private tutoring companies. So this year, in the summer of 2021, the Chinese Communist Party banned for-profit tutoring for core school subjects. Since the coronavirus began spreading across China early last year, long-distance learning became common. That, in turn, was a huge boon to private tutoring companies, as well as to students and their parents. But the problem for the Chinese Communist Party is they don't have enough control over the money these companies are making, or the content of what they're teaching. So the Chinese Communist Party enacted what they call a double alleviation policy. You see, the proposed reason for the ban is to alleviate academic stress on students and financial costs for families, encouraging them to have more children. That sounds like not the whole reason. I mean, if parents want to help their kids get a better education, why would you stop them? Well, private tutoring does give an advantage to the wealthy. Wealthy families can afford it, poor families can't. This creates an education gap. But it's not like the Communist Party has stopped their wealthy elite from spending loads of money on other things, like luxury apartments or luxury helicopters. It's not like the CCP puts much money into rural education for the poor kids who really need it. So I don't think closing the education gap is the reason. Communism was never really about equality. However, there might be another reason the party is cracking down on private tutoring. I'll explain after the break. Welcome back. The private tutoring business in China has been wildly successful. It's been bringing in big sums of money, and a lot of that has been from foreign investment. Public disclosures show that prior to the crackdown this summer, 7 after-school tutoring companies, mostly listed in the US, had more than 250,000 full-time and contract employees combined. And that's why China's new guidelines specifically ban foreign investment in such firms via mergers and acquisitions, franchise development, and variable interest entities, which are investment vehicles frequently used by foreign investors to bypass restrictions in China's education sector. The Communist Party believes the increase of capital in the private tutoring industry is excessive and goes against Xi Jinping's goal of achieving a moderately prosperous society. Essentially, the ban seeks to put an end to the foreign investment in private tutoring companies. The Chinese State Council thinks it can do this by forcing tutoring companies to register as non-profit organizations. Curriculum-based tutoring institutions are now barred from raising money through listings or other capital-related activities. Companies are taking a huge blow from this private tutoring ban. So are workers. Education industry job postings dropped, with the capital city of Beijing seeing the greatest decline, down 49% versus March. Companies had to retract job offers that were initially given to new candidates. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. Some of the private tutoring companies have tried to adapt to the new regulations, like by offering non-core subject courses such as drama or even parental training, since these subjects aren't affected by the regulations. But that's not necessarily what Chinese parents want for their children. Well, what they really want is to send their kids to the US to study, like the way Xi Jinping sent his daughter to Harvard. But this sudden crackdown has created a massive problem in China. Companies are going bankrupt, like One Smart Education, one of China's biggest private tutoring companies. It's even listed on the New York Stock Exchange. It IPO'd back in 2018 at about $10 a share. Now, it's down to just 40 cents a share. Sorry, American investors. One Smart's main revenue source, tuition, has slowed to a trickle. Now, families who prepaid for tutoring are demanding repayment. One Smart Education is one of the many private tutoring companies that was funded in part by prepayments by students' parents. Before Beijing stepped in, private education companies encouraged parents to pay months of tuition in advance in order to fuel their expansions. Now, with those plans prohibited, courses banned, and cash running dry, parents are lining up to demand their money back. Here's a photo of angry parents crowded in a rainy afternoon in front of One Smart Education's headquarters in Shanghai. One Smart Education is going through a liquidity crisis. Seemingly reliable prepayment methods backed by foreign investment were abruptly turned upside down due to arbitrary regulations by the Chinese regime. What One Smart is facing is a bit like Evergrande, but with tutoring instead of real estate. And just like Evergrande's downfall, we're now seeing One Smart go bankrupt. More and more parents are coming out to claim refunds for their prepayments. And that's not going to go well for anyone. One Smart isn't the first Chinese education company to go bankrupt because of the crackdown, but it is one of the biggest. And more companies are going to follow. And now it's time for me to answer a question from a fan who supports China Uncensored on Patreon or Locals. This question comes from Logan on Patreon. Do you ever worry that the CCP will listen to your criticism and use it to improve their propaganda? Well, Logan, one criticism I have of the CCP is that they never listen to criticism. So frankly, I'm not worried. Besides, I don't think anyone at a high level in the CCP watches China Uncensored. But if you are watching Xi Jinping, I'm still waiting for you to say yes to my exclusive interview. Thanks for your question, Logan. And thank you to everyone else who supports China Uncensored through the subscription platform Locals and the crowdfunding platform Patreon. The links to both of those are below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching China Uncensored.